Welcome back to another episode of the ShefF1 podcast. I'm Rudy Brown, and joining me, as per the usual, is Seb Alston and Amy Hammerslag. We've just had the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix weekend to close out the second round of the 2024 season, and not exactly one to remember, but it was better than Bahrain, I think we can safely say. Definitely the highlight of the weekend was the exceptional rookie performance put in by Ollie Behrman in that Ferrari. Amy, I saw you go mental on Twitter when that was all sort of beginning to unfold. Just tell everyone else sort of how that went down.
Yeah, I was just so excited by it because I kind of woke up late that day and used to have been chatting about it. I was like, whoa, what is going on? I knew Carlos was ill, but I didn't think it was going to be that. And to bring in, there's so many records he's broken. The youngest Ferrari driver ever, the first Brit to drive for them since 1990. I think it was Nigel Mansell.
No, that's incorrect. A lot of people got that wrong. Eddie Irvine was the last Brit to drive for Ferrari. The last Englishman to drive for Ferrari was Nigel Mansell in that sort of time. Yeah.
Well, there we go. So
Sorry guys. Nerd alert.
But no, it was just really nice to see, all these records he's breaking, and we thought Lewis actually could take that.
Yeah,
I guess
yeah.
not. And he came in an FP3, and within the first few laps, he was taking that car as his own. It was disappointing because he was on pole for F2 that weekend.
Yeah,
However, when you got an opportunity to not only drive in F1 but in a Ferrari, it doesn't get much better than that. So yeah, I thought he had an amazing race, and it was just nice to see. And like he spoke about it was, the F2 is the perfect way to get into F1, and it shows that there is a pathway. And I think it's just not going to be long until we actually see him in a permanent seat there. So really nice to see.
Yeah, it certainly put the brakes on his F2 season so far. He had a pretty torrid time in Bahrain, and then sort of goes and gets pole at Saudi Arabia, and then into the F1 car the next day. And he certainly grabbed I wouldn't say the bull by the horns, because that's, he grabbed the horse by the horns, as it were, in a Ferrari car, because he was just really entertaining behind the wheel. He took his opportunity and just ran. He was so, feisty and punchy behind the wheel, wanting to make as many overtakes as he could as soon as possible. That battle that they had with Tsunoda for sort of the first half of the race was so fun to watch. And he was just, we hadn't seen that for a while. Someone so eager to make such a brilliant first impression, especially with no rookies on the grid this year either. And obviously last year, I'm pretty sure it was just Logan Sargent that was the only rookie on the grid, right? And he didn't really have
Oscar Piastri.
And Oscar Piastri as well, of course, but neither of which, there was something different about Ollie Behrman. With it being a one-time thing, he had less to lose, as it were, and so it definitely showed. In a Ferrari,
it was just because obviously Ferrari's always old-fashioned. They go, with older drivers, and even seeing Charles Leclerc, he's quite young for a Ferrari driver, even now. So it was just really nice to see both of them together as well, because no future teammates. So.
Yeah, well, we'll have to wait and see. Yeah. Depends how long Lewis is there for. But it's nice as well, because maybe new people to the sport might have seen Ollie Behrman's debut and thought, that's not particularly impressive. Didn't make it into Q3, despite the fact he's in, arguably the second or third fastest car on the grid. But it's a case of not only is he 18 years old, he's had hardly any experience in an F1 car, and not that long ago we were seeing reserve drivers come in for teams and just, no matter what car they were in, finish towards the back of the grid, whether that's in qualifying or in the race. And long gone are those days with exceptional talents like Ollie Behrman, just ready to adapt extremely quickly to such a, because you remember back to Bahrain and how difficult that car looked to drive as well. It can't have been very easy at all for him to get to grips with that car, especially so quickly, missing out on the first 2 practice sessions, I think it was. So, he had, 1 hour to get to grips with it, and it was just, really, really impressive to watch. Seb, sorry, we sort of just completely abandoned you in this first part of the podcast, but what did you make of Behrman's performance?
I thought, it was definitely exceptional. When it came into qualifying, obviously he had FP3, and I thought he didn't look completely at home in FP3, and I thought, he's going to actually struggle quite a bit here in qualifying. He didn't have any testing, obviously only FP3, but for him to come in and straight away, just to finish ahead of anyone, considering how close the field is, you look at, in Bahrain in Q1, it was like a second split. For him to come in and do that, I think is so impressive. Yeah. And in the race, obviously, he was able to make up positions, and it wasn't like a performance where you're like, oh my God, it's like Max Verstappen-esque, exceptional. But for what, with the context around it, I thought it was exceptional.
Yeah.
It made me think, actually, who it helps as well, Kimi Antonelli.
Definitely, yeah.
Because if he's able to, obviously in Bahrain, he actually did somewhat get the better of Ollie Behrman. And if over the course of the season he's able to stay relatively close to him and maybe pip in a few races, that'll give Mercedes more confidence. Seeing this Behrman performance, how he was able to get in the car without testing, without any massive prep around him. If Antonelli then has that next year, I think it'll give them more confidence to actually be willing to put him into the seat so early. So I think that'll have helped him a lot. But yeah, overall, Ollie Behrman, I think definitely the drive of the weekend.
Yeah,
absolutely.
He couldn't have predicted that there.
Yeah, well, I suppose driver of the weekend is fair. Pole position in F2 and then points on F1 debut just 2 days afterwards. So yeah, no, definitely a really, really strong performance from him.
Isn't it crazy? He's so he's not so much younger than us, but he is younger than us.
Well, the first ever F1 driver, I think, younger than all of us.
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah.
We're just sat in a room talking about it.
Yeah, it is weird. But yeah, really great debut performance. And then just a little more on Kimi Antonelli before we move away. Obviously that Prema rivalry, the inter-team battle between Behrman and Antonelli, arguably the two most sort of watched talents in
hyped talents.
Yeah, definitely the two most hype around them. Obviously driving for Prema, if you land the Prema seat, you're sort of not guaranteed success in Formula 2, but it's you're going to be running at the top end of the field. More in most cases, apart from maybe Sean Gallale a few years ago, but that was an exception to the rule. But it's interesting to see Ollie Behrman do so well, considering a lot of people were touting, yourself included, Amy, were touting Kimi Antonelli to go on and win the whole thing in his debut season at just 17 years old. So I can't wait to see how that unfolds for the rest of the year, especially because he it wasn't a terrible weekend for Antonelli in Saudi Arabia, but there were some mistakes creeping in here and there. It could have been, considering how quick Behrman was in the same car, it could have been a lot better for the young Italian. But we'll move away from them because it feels like Kimi Antonelli must be the most recurring name on this podcast so far after the sort of start of the new season. But we'll go back to F1 now. I just want to take a brief moment to talk about the pole position lap Max Verstappen put in, because it was almost identical to that one in 2021. Obviously without the mistake at the end. Was it a quicker lap than Hamilton's pole time in 2021? It
was, yeah.
Which is just baffling. I mean, these cars are supposed to be not a lot slower, but definitely slower than the ones of the previous regulations. By the end of the sort of cycle. And then, that lap was just flawless.
They didn't even really need to do it either. He would have been clear of everyone anyway. Yeah. He didn't have to push to the absolute limit, but it's just in Max's nature that he always pushes the limit no matter what.
Yeah.
And I think we haven't really been able to see as much of that from him recently because he hasn't really been fighting with anyone. We haven't really been able to see the 2020-21 sort of Max where he was arguably the most exciting driver on the grid because he actually had to make moves and he had to actually really push.
And my God, did he as well? Yeah.
So for actually to see that again, I know obviously he has been pushing at other things. I'm not saying he hasn't been pushing at all, but for him to be right on the limit again and actually be able to see him at the peak of his powers is so impressive. And even if it is boring, it's ridiculous.
It'd be so funny because you'd see them go on the first runs. They always end up doing theirs a bit further behind Red Bull. So everyone set the times. Charles or Fernando were going top. And then we would see, Max go and put it, 5 tenths, quicker. Yeah. And then to be fair to Charles and Fernando this weekend, they went on the second runs and they got up there. But like you said, there was no point Max doing a second run anyways because they got close, but nowhere near close. And he was just making that gap even bigger. So he is incredible. Everything he gets is deserved. Yeah. It's just so frustrating to watch when he wins every weekend.
Please go to Mercedes, Max. Please. And hopefully Mercedes are terrible and we get to see Max again fighting because that's why everyone loved Max, a few years ago because he was so exciting.
Great lap from Charles Leclerc as well. Sorry.
Because you've got your radio voice.
Yeah, I know.
just
whoosh. Great lap. Great lap, Charles. Well done. Okay. Where were we?
Great lap from
It was. Okay. Are we keeping that in? But not only was it Max that put in a decent performance in qualifying, let's not overlook the sort of the effort that Charles Leclerc put in to get P2. You know, it was still a really decent lap regardless. Quicker than Perez as well, who's had some decent pace around Saudi Arabia in the past. But it just wasn't enough. I mean, no one was going to topple that lap time. And then, you know, in the race as well, it was a case of overtakes just seemed like a bit of a formality for Max, obviously with the safety car restart sort of, you know, jumbling up the order a bit. It was like they weren't even there. Although it was Lando Norris out front after that safety car restart, his pace was really, really strong, especially on those tyres. You know, it was mincemeat for Max Verstappen, really, wasn't it? Just the second that he was within that 1 second gap, it was just game over, which was really interesting to see. And that McLaren did look really good. Any more thoughts on that, Amy?
No, I just obviously liked Oscar Piastri's race. Thought it was really interesting. Being stuck behind Lewis, obviously, it was almost how Max was stuck behind Lando. They had a very similar, you know, race strategy, Lewis and Lando. So, but once he got past him, I thought it was incredible, and it was best he could have done in that car. So, no, I'm happy with it, and hopefully Australia, different sort of track again, could even be better on there. So exciting times for McLaren, but still need to, you know, progress.
There is still definitely that seismic gap between the rest of the field and Red Bull, of course, McLaren being no exception. But yeah, it was two, you know, despite Lando's jump start, two promising drives from both McLaren drivers. But yeah, Amy mentioned that, you know, Piastri was being stuck behind Lewis Hamilton for quite some time. It was a decent drive from that part of the race from Lewis in that regard, because I'm reading reports coming out saying that the Mercedes was the slowest car on the grid in the high-speed parts of the Jeddah circuit, which, well, I mean, all of them are high-speed parts of that circuit. And yeah, I mean, they did really struggle. I thought they and the Alpines, which obviously sort of goes without saying, were sitting ducks on the straight. The RB, I've got to say, Ollie Behrman did look a sort of it took a while for him to get past Tsunoda. But yeah, you know, let's go back to Mercedes. It was definitely a weekend to forget. Not terrible, double points finish, Seb, but you know, if you'd have said this sort of this time 2 years ago, they are still not making those, you know, necessary steps that I don't know, it just seems like there's some stagnated progress at Mercedes.
It's just the third year in a row of the same stuff, you know. There's actually, I even believed it. I don't know why. I'm stupid. I got carried into the hype of pre-season testing. It was like, oh, Mercedes are really confident about their package. They think they finally got something they understand. And then first two races of the season, especially after Saudi Arabia, Toto Wolff coming out saying, yeah, you know, when we're looking at the data, it just doesn't match with what we're looking at. And I was just like, oh, okay, great, brilliant. There we go. And yeah, like they when Hamilton was trying to catch Norris, that was like the first sector. He was literally losing over half a second each time in one sector. Yeah. And it was just like the gap between them and McLaren was massive. Like, he obviously made it up in other parts of the lap, but that was arguably down to Hamilton just being, I mean, he's Lewis Hamilton. Like, it was, I think you can see definitely now why, you know, Lewis Hamilton does want to jump ship, because he seemed frustrated after the race as well. It actually seemed like it is the same year, different stuff. Well, same year, same stuff. Like, it's literally just, how is this the same team that won 7 championships in a row? Yeah. Like, I can't believe it. Like, you look at them and the most basic mistakes they make. It was actually 8, wasn't it, championships in a row? Yeah. So, like, and you look at them now,
with much
ridiculous.
The same personnel as well. I mean, they've not had anyone particularly major. You know, obviously Valtteri Bottas has left for George Russell, but you could argue that George Russell is a better driver anyway. So, you know, the one major, you know, person that they've had to offload, they've made a better replacement with. Yeah. And so, I mean, it's such an enigma, these regulation changes from 2022 as well, because more often than not, you know, no matter how severe they were, Red Bull always, you know, in the previous regulation changes of the past, do tend to drop down the order a little bit, and Mercedes were just, you know, it's like it just didn't happen at all. It didn't affect them. They continued to be dominant out front, no matter how they tried to be slowed down by the regulations. And then 2022, all the way up until now, it's been totally different. And like you say, it's just, you know, same, you know, New Year, same stuff basically, and it's just. There has been absolutely no progress. I mean, you thought there was at the end of 2022, you know, that excellent sprint race performance and of course the performance in the Grand Prix from George Russell as well. Wasn't it 1-2 in Interlagos, which was just like
a race win for another team other than Red Bull again.
Yeah, and they won the sprint race as well that weekend.
How do you go from that to then, after all that progress made to go and achieve something so, impressive, to then back to where they are again. It just makes absolutely no sense.
Ferrari are definitely the team who look most likely to, go on and actually go and, compete with Red Bull. But it's sad for Mercedes, because when I was watching the race, Lando and Lewis went on softs, and they were close with each other.
Yeah.
He was catching him, in DRS zone, and I was thinking, obviously, as a Lando fan, no, like, please come on, Lando. And after 2 laps of him just getting close and not being able to overtake once they were on the straight, I was like, I have nothing to worry about here.
Yeah.
I sat back and I enjoyed my race, and it's Lewis Hamilton in that car. He almost got beat by Ollie Behrman. He was 300th.
He did.
In
Qualifying, you mean? Sorry,
qualifying, sorry. And that's Lewis Hamilton, and he's just excited to jump ship, I reckon.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, especially with his teammate and the way he's performing now. It was another solid race from George Russell. I mean, I don't recall much coverage time from him. He just sort of drove a solid race, finished P6, didn't get outscored by a rookie in his first race, and sort of finished comfortably behind Fernando Alonso, just in his own little bubble, really. Yeah. And it was honestly, I couldn't tell you how he got there. It was just a nice drive from George Russell, clearly, in the end. No mistakes. The team must have been okay with the pit stops. It was a good strategy as well, definitely a good strategy, especially with the sort of the safety car. I don't know, mishap, is that how you put it? It's just the spanner in the works that a safety car can throw, especially at that point of the race where Lance Stroll did crash out. Speaking of which, I do want to maybe move on to some predictions, because I am so I don't want to say proud of it, because it was it was a pretty easy one to make. But for those of you new round here, we are starting to be quite competitive with our predictions ahead of every Grand Prix weekend. Well, Amy and I have been quite competitive. Seb is just sort of trailing behind a little bit. But we've got numerous different categories. We'll go over them all one by one, because I tried doing them all at once last time, just reeling them off, and there was way more than I thought there were. But yeah, and then so for every prediction we get right, we get a point, whether that's something as specific as driver of the day, or whereabouts someone finishes on the podium, we get a point for it. And then whoever wins at the end of whoever has the most points at the end of the season wins. I suppose we haven't developed a prize, we haven't developed a forfeit or anything like that. I think we'll just keep it nice and innocent with the with just well done you, pat on the back sort of thing. But yeah, so we'll start off with pole position. It was we all put Max Verstappen, so that's a point each. Not exactly the most riveting start, but there was literally nobody else you could have predicted for that. And we would have looked pretty foolish if we'd have gone with somebody else, considering that lap he put in. I mean, it was just out of this world. So we'll move away from pole position, because we've already done enough glazing for Max Verstappen in that regard. But the star of qualifying, so not necessarily a person that finishes on pole position, someone that could put in a decent lap throughout a different point of the throughout somewhere else on the grid. I said Oscar Piastri, Amy said Fernando Alonso, and Seb said Pierre Gasly. Where did we start, Seb? What went wrong for Gasly?
I was thinking this is actually going to be correct. When I was watching it, and obviously FP2, FP3, Gasly was consistently ahead of Ocon, and then even in Q1, like his first couple of laps times, he was actually quick enough to get into Q2, and then it goes on to the final run. Obviously, so much track evolution. Yeah. Gasly has the chance, one lap, gets it right. If he puts in the pace that he's been showing for the rest of the weekend, he gets into Q2, and lo and behold, he has some damage on his car. There's a massive snap and oversteer, aborts a lap, and actually ends up finishing behind Ocon from his other laps. So, so annoyed, because all I said was he'll be the star of qualifying if he gets into Q2, and he should have done. He actually should have done, but then Alpine doing Alpine, and just. Oh, Pierre.
Fernando Alonso, Amy. Again, not a bad prediction, to be fair. He's just been a very reliable driver to sort of back in the midfield. Finished one place ahead of my star of qualifying, Oscar Piastri. So I'd say, given that he's in a slower car, I think you win this round. You get the point for Fernando Alonso being the star of qualifying. P4 in the end, only about 4/5 off Max Verstappen as well.
Yeah.
So
his FP2 was really fast for me, which is why I ended up predicting Alonso for this anyways. And then FP3, it weren't as good, but I was like, you know what, I'm gonna stick with him. And then every single qualifying session, he would come out and he would just obliterate Stroll. Other than that Q3, because Stroll finished second again, didn't he?
Yes, he did. He shot right to the top.
Because my next prediction did not correlate with that. But no, Alonso just impressed me, and actually as they parked up I heard Karim, what's he called?
Karim Chandler.
Yeah, he said on comms that his star of quali was Fernando Alonso.
Yeah,
so if
you
you weren't
I was
gonna,
like, for God's sake.
you weren't gonna give it me, I was gonna quote Karim. So I'm happy.
Yeah, I mean his teammate, finishing P10 in the end, so pretty bog standard from Lance Stroll, really. Although he was, like you say, he did shoot up the timing sheets, especially in Q1. If it's correct here, he was about a tenth off Max Verstappen's time in Q1.
In Q1, that was his fastest time out of. He didn't go quicker in
Really?
Q2,
And
it was
Q3,
as well.
which is mental considering the track evolution.
Yeah.
The fact I saw the thing about Alpine were slower in this year than they were last year in qualifying. That's just because they weren't in Q3.
Yeah.
And also track evolution. Stroll was how on earth
It would have
was
put
his
him
quickest time. He would have finished on what was that?
P7. P7 he would have finished with that
What are you
Q1.
doing, Lance Stroll? How did you even do that?
It's the fact the weekend gets so much worse for him as well. But the man that finished 9th, shout out Yuki Tsunoda, by the way. A really solid performance to put in P9 into Q3 and just considerably better than Daniel Ricciardo, making me look like an absolute mug with my predictions at the start of the season. We'll move away from start of qualifying. So, well done, Amy. You get the point for Fernando Alonso. The flop of qualifying. So, I said, rather foolishly, Charles Leclerc. Seb also said Yuki Tsunoda. I didn't even see that until just now. And Amy, you said Lance Stroll. I mean, it's
Lance.
It's
I
Lance
mean,
Stroll.
Leclerc was incredible, I guess, for against Max Verstappen, that lap he put in, so it's not him. Sorry, Rudy. When you said that, you're like, I'm sorry to say it. I was like, no, I'm sorry, Rudy. And then Yuki Tsunoda, to even get in Q3 is impressive anyways.
Yeah.
Then to finish above cars that are faster than him.
Yep.
Lance Stroll.
He's literally half a second quicker than Ricciardo in Q2 as well, I think.
Yeah, insane.
So, I actually wanted Tsunoda to do well, so I was like, I was like, if I predict some flop, like if he does well, it's fine.
It's a win-win.
Like but I don't know. It's just.
It's a bit
I'm just doing terribly.
As for the podium now, none of us got it correct, did we? No. I mean, we all said Max to win. Shock horror. I predicted Perez P2, which ended up being correct in the end, so that's 2 points for me. And then I said Lando Norris P3, which didn't exactly work out because it wasn't meant to be for Lando Norris in that race. Jumped the start. Did he get penalised for that?
No, which was really weird because it looked so cut and dry. Like he jumped forward. Like I don't know how
exactly.
you can't
It's a
get
case
penalised for
of the commentators were arguing. Maybe he didn't move out of the grid slot even. But
I think he did, didn't he?
He must have done. But Will Buxton even went onto Twitter and brought up article whatever of the regulations and said, if you move before the lights go out, that is a slam dunk penalty. And so he's got away with murder there, Lando Norris.
Yeah.
But even still, I'd say Piastri was quicker anyway. I think for the most part of the race anyway. Apart from the safety car restart, I'd say Piastri just had a better weekend pace wise. And he ended up, outperforming him in the race as well. So no P3 for Lando Norris, unfortunately. Amy went a bit more rogue. She said George Russell P2.
I just thought George Russell was going to be much faster. I liked how he was in practice sessions, and I don't know why. I just thought Perez was going to have a stinker, and by stinker that means P3. And I should have really put my sensible head on and realised it should have been maybe Charles who was going to be on the podium instead of Russell, but we will take the L.
Yeah, so I mean, still 1 point predicting Max correctly. And then same with you as well, Seb.
So no, because I actually got the 3 on the podium.
You did get all 3 correct, just in the wrong order. So Seb said Leclerc P2 and Perez P3.
It should have been obvious though, because I don't know why I didn't think about how easy it was for Perez to pass Leclerc in Bahrain, and then actually put 2 and 2 together. Yes, Red Bull are actually a lot quicker in race pace than Ferrari, but I just, in my head, I was like, it'll be like Las Vegas. I don't know why I said that, but it'll be really close between Leclerc and Perez, and they might overtake each other on the last couple of laps. But no, Perez did a really good job and actually was just miles clear.
Moving on to driver of the day now, and again, not exactly a great showing from all of us. I said Lando Norris just based off my other sort of predictions. Which obviously wasn't correct in the end. Jumped the start, slower than his teammate. Didn't finish poorly in the end, but it was just a weekend to forget for Lando. No, maybe not a weekend to forget, but a forgettable weekend for Lando Norris. Amy said Lewis Hamilton, Which, I mean, in that car, it was a great defence on Oscar Piastri to begin with, but...
It didn't really mean anything.
No,
He was defending
exactly.
for a place that he was always going to give up because of the strategy. So,
Yep.
I mean, him and Norris just had a very similar weekend.
Yeah.
It would have been
Yeah.
interesting to see how they actually got on if they had pitted like everyone else did.
everyone
Yeah,
under
yeah,
the safety
yeah.
car, like,
No, yeah, it
could
was
they
the
have made up
strategy.
positions.
It was the
but-
strategy, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Sort of-
it was
and-
unlucky as well.
And the pair of them, Lando Norris and Lewis Hamilton, both getting outperformed by Ollie Behrman as well.
Yeah.
So, obviously it was a great drive from him, but, you've got no excuses really when he's an 18-year-old rookie with 1 hour of experience, well, no, an hour and a half, given qualifying as well. Like, they really should have done a better job, those two. But it wasn't terrible in the end. Points to points, I suppose.
Exactly.
And then, Seb, you said Alex Albon. Again, what do we make of this, really?
I don't think any of us should get a point for this one, really.
No, well, to be fair, P11 in the end, it wasn't...
It's not too bad.
He was in that
His
big
race was
battle.
sort of ruined by Magnussen, so it's like, yeah, he had damage. Obviously, Magnussen hit him and then also held him up.
Yeah,
So-
yeah, just left him absolutely no room into, was it turn 3, that weird collision.
So
But
it's
in-
just unlucky. He
Yeah.
had an okay race, but it's not a drive for the day, is it?
Hamilton did get the second most after Ollie Behrman's incredible 48%.
Oh,
or something.
yeah.
He got 9% of the.
Well, I suppose,
Well,
yeah. Even
That's
though...
true.
We're going with the fans.
I think, we should probably go
I
with the
think-
fans here
should we
then.
do?
So
Yeah.
if
Lewis
you're
Hamilton-
happy, I'm happy.
Well, yeah, we're going to get the points. You must be happy. But yeah, so we'll give Amy the point for that one, as he was the second most popular in the Driver of the Day vote. Now on to something I'd say a little bit more easy to decide points-wise. The flop of the weekend. I was, with a stroke of genius, sent Lance Stroll, sort of, going with the easy choice there, as it were. Amy said his teammate Fernando Alonso, and then Seb said Logan Sargent. Out of the three, only one of them crashed out, and it was not Logan Sargent, it was Lance Stroll.
And you literally said he was going to crash out as well.
Exactly
so-
what I said. Go back and listen to the previous episode, because I said something, because Seb said about how Logan Sargent is just one of those drivers that's likely just to crash out and cause a safety car. And I was like, yeah, tell you who else will do that? Lance Stroll, pretty much. And he did exactly that. He just totally fumbled the entry into one corner, clipped the inside barrier, wheel goes in on itself, can't stop the car, into the wall, and he couldn't bring it back despite his engineer's ambitions there.
So silly. Can you bring it back? And he's literally just half his car's just fallen off in the wall. Yeah, mate.
Yeah, definitely. No, it was shocking. And then even before that, not exactly setting the world on fire, and pretty poor in qualifying as well, considering there was more pace to come from him and not just the Aston Martin car in general. And then obviously Fernando Alonso having a great weekend on top of all that misery for Lance Stroll. So I'd like to give myself the point there for that one. Logan Sargent, not really much to say about that weekend.
In the race, I thought it was actually okay.
He was fine. He was in that battle with Ocon and Alex Albon and Kevin Magnussen, which was pretty entertaining in the grand scheme of things.
He might have actually been able to overtake Albon as well. He was actually told he can't overtake Albon.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was okay. He didn't crash. Which
Difficult
is,
to measure, really, isn't
exactly.
it? But it's certainly not the flop of the weekend. No. It was fine. So, yeah. And then moving on to, that's an interesting one. So we've got the best team of the weekend. Now, let's just nullify one of them immediately. Amy said Mercedes. It's a no from me, unfortunately. Seb said Ferrari, and I said Haas. No,
I think it's Haas, unfortunately.
Do you really think so? But, well, it's the case of Nico Hülkenberg points, and that came as a result of amazing strategy and defending from Kevin Magnussen to hold up a load of cars that were probably quicker than Nico Hülkenberg in the grand scheme of things as well. So it was just a really solid Saturday from Haas in that regard. Nothing to say, in terms of the rest of the weekend. Not bad qualifying performance from K-Mag in the end. But yeah, great drive from Hülkenberg. After all the mishaps, 20 seconds worth of penalties given to Magnussen, after all the penalties were given out, he drove really well. It was, and I know it's...
I have some problems with it, I've got to say.
I know it's sort of, how do I put this, unethical driving, but aside from all the stuff he got penalties for, there was technically nothing wrong with it, I suppose.
Well, I think everyone said about it being a great drive, and don't get me wrong, his defending was good.
Yeah.
But admittedly, it was in a sector where it's quite easy to defend.
Yeah,
I'm not going to
so.
lie. But how? I'm not saying it's the same as Crashgate, right?
No.
But if you look at it on paper, obviously Crashgate, you're crashing, and it's for a win. Okay,
Yeah.
someone is Piquet actually physically crashing. Okay, it's different. But Kevin Magnussen essentially cut a corner to get ahead of Tsunoda, and then backs him up for his teammate to get a point. That's sort of cheating, no?
Genius is the
Like,
word.
I actually think it's really, like, if that's actually what they plan to do, to actually cut a corner, I think it's quite clever.
Oh, yeah.
But then what's to say, okay, Carlos Sainz, or if they'd used Ollie Behrman, completely cutting a corner, getting in front of Max Verstappen, and just parking his car in front of him.
Yeah.
And then Leclerc goes would be, people would say that was really wrong. But why aren't they saying it about this? I don't
It's
really
when
see
fans who don't, well, not fans, but the people who started watching F1 who say simple stuff. I know Angry Ginge made a stream comment on the stream.
Yeah.
He's like, why doesn't Oscar Piastri just stop at the line, because he's clearly behind Lando, and just wipe out the rest of the grid? Like, if he wanted to take it to the extreme, why
But that's
not?
what they did. That's essentially what Haas have done this weekend. And everyone's saying, oh, it's like genius and stuff like that. And like, yeah, but...
I don't
Is
think...
it cheating?
I have a problem. I don't know why people haven't mentioned how
It was
not
quite
right.
extreme. It wasn't planned, I don't think,
No, I don't
because
think so.
I think they weren't anticipating, especially after how qualifying went down, they weren't anticipating Nico to be fighting for P10 or at least clinging on to P10 because he wasn't really. He had sort of a little tussle with Ollie Behrman at one point, I'm pretty sure, but then apart from that, he was sort of in his own little bubble once again. But I think once they realised, hang on, a point is on the cards here. Then K-Mag was a bit of a device, as it were, and you know, he's not reckless. That's a bit far. But if you want a ballsy drive from anybody on the grid, Kevin Magnussen is one that will just throw caution to the wind, as he did. But it did come after the penalties. The great defence that everyone's talking about did come after those two monumental mistakes earlier in the race, warranting 20
was it
seconds.
a mistake to cut the corner to get past Tsunoda?
No. Well,
and then also take out someone else who's going for that points position in Albon?
Well, that was. I still think that was before they realised that Hulkenberg was genuinely in the running for points there.
Well, I don't know, because obviously he didn't pit. He was the only reason he was in that position because he didn't box. He did the Hamilton and Norris tactic and actually worked for him. But it wouldn't have worked for him without Hulkenberg doing that, without him actually getting ahead of Tsunoda, because Tsunoda, you know, in clean air would have been able to catch up to Hulkenberg, or at least the gap wouldn't have been 20 seconds. Magnussen was able to basically take off like nearly a second a lap from Tsunoda, just because he was basically parking in front of him. So
it was impressive though, the way that he could slow down so many cars without DRS as well. He was a proper cork in the top of the bottle.
Although it's a little bit like, and then afterwards he was able to get quite a big gap between himself and that midfield pack. Like, if he'd actually gone for it, could Magnussen actually have just got a point on his own?
Maybe.
Because the pace was clearly there. The pace was actually there for him to actually do that. So
that would have been hilarious. Although obviously with the penalties, I think it's a case of there was no way he was going to, you know, close the gap and then 10 seconds on P10, you know, so it was unlikely. So I think it was, again, not ethical, but considering it paid off and they got away with it.
It was interesting. It was fun to see.
And it was very entertaining.
You can't see that every week though. But I think if Charles had got P2, I think it would have been Ferrari I'd have to go for.
But Haas delivering great entertainment.
and got points, which,
and a point,
which they haven't looked like they'd do this season, then definitely.
I think it's Haas.
So well, a wonderstruck prediction again. I'm pleased with that one, to be fair.
And also you did say in the video, or it's not actually a video, but the predictions, you said P10, P11, that'll be good enough for them.
And that was almost how it finished on track.
Basically.
It was P10, P12, even with
and it would have been
penalty
11 without the penalty.
Yeah. So that was weird. That was a weird prediction. And and then I even said in the episode as well, it was purely based off vibes. I mean, I had some logic behind it. I wasn't expecting that. I have to admit, I thought it'd just be two sort of, you know, bog standard middle of the road races for both Haas drivers. But no, it was hilarious viewing. But we'll move on to, you know, I think more hilariousness now with our shock predictions that did end up being a bit shocking.
They were shocking.
So I don't think anyone is...
At least I sent it. You two have quite racist.
So, I mean, no one is getting a point here as none of our shock predictions did come true. So, Amy, you did send it and say Max DNF, and you sort of put that down to a mechanical issue, didn't you?
Not a driver's fault. And it was just due to that I'd gone for him for pole, gone for him for winning the race, and me personally...
Hang on, so why did you go for him for winning the race and then say, oh, he's going to DNF?
Because I always have to have hope that Charles or Lando will win, or another driver. Like, they always has to... I always have
points
to,
as
just
well.
in case, because every week I say it, and this was the first week I genuinely went with sense. And what if this was the one week that he genuinely DNF'd? I'd kick myself, so in some way I And I'll take the shock prediction because realistically, was I going to get it right? Probably not.
Yeah,
so.
but imagine you did. That would have been,
That would have been like 10 points. I think for shock prediction, if any of us ever get it right,
and it's genuinely.
I think, yeah, and it has to be a shock as well. No, I like that rule a lot.
Logan Sargent's win the
How many points? 5 points? I think that'd be
5 points is
5
fair.
points,
yeah. Maybe we'll grade it. It can be subjective.
Okay,
If it's not very shocking 1 point, if it's like how on earth did you guess this, then between 5 and 10 or whatever.
Would that have been a 10 point?
I think that's a 5. I think Max did have a 5.
But it didn't happen, so let's move on. Seb, you said double Alpine Q2. I mean, that didn't happen. They
could have done though.
I mean, it was better than Bahrain.
Yeah, it was better than Bahrain. Gasly definitely could have done and probably should have done. Ocon didn't quite have the pace, so I wasn't surprised that he didn't make it. But yeah, I don't. Also, that if we were grading that, if that happened, that would have been like a 1. Like that wasn't. That wouldn't have been that shocking, realistically.
And
then I said Zhou Guanyu to finish in the points, and despite his efforts in Bahrain, where he wasn't exactly close, but he did finish P11 with a solid drive in the end. This Saudi Arabian Grand Prix weekend definitely one to forget for Guan Yu Zhou. Crashes left, right, and centre before the race had even begun. Was it one of the practice sessions or was it qualifying where Zhou just completely?
FP3, wasn't it? Because he couldn't take part in qualifying.
Then he didn't take part in
qualifying. He came out like 1 minute and 44 seconds to go, and he just missed going across the line.
Yeah, it was.
If not though, and I genuinely thought he would have had a good weekend.
Yeah, well, I mean, the race was nothing to write home about, really. Finishing, 6 seconds behind Valtteri Bottas. Again, it's quite hard to talk about this race from Zhou because no one really knows what happened because nothing did happen. So I'm not going to try and make up some stuff and say, oh yeah, he could have done this, and this better. We've got absolutely no idea, really. But yeah, not ideal from Zhou Guan Yu. And so none of us finishing with any shock prediction points there. Let's just tot up what we've got now. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 from this weekend. Amy also has 5. Seb pulling in another 2.
Yes, doubling my score.
So as it stands, I'm on 10 points, Amy's on 9 points, very tight at the top between the two of us, and then Seb is on 4.
God. I need a shock prediction.
Hey, the only way is up. You do need a shock prediction.
I really need a shock prediction.
Because that will just blow everything wide open. And
it needs to be shocking as well.
We're City Liverpool-esque and you're Tottenham.
That's tight. Alright, so that's about it in terms of on-track things for Saudi Arabia. But of course, something that is still dominating the headlines in the world of F1 at the moment is the situation at Red Bull. Now, of course, we're sort of going to tread lightly around this because obviously it's a very sensitive subject. But, the rumours mill is sort of, there's been some interesting things being churned out through the media. So for anyone unfamiliar, which is crazy if you are, basically, because it's been all over the news, Christian Horner was accused a few weeks ago of inappropriate behaviour with a female colleague within Red Bull. And since then, it has been sort of, I suppose, dismissed. They have actually suspended the female colleague in question, and he's been cleared by a sort of independent board of what would have been probably, other middle-aged white blokes that work at Red Bull. So yeah, and apparently, I'm seeing figures like £700,000 being paid as hush money and stuff like that. So it's obviously all a little bit.
Red Bull upped it to $1 million.
Yeah. So because it was 700k from his own pocket. This is what we've read, by the way. This is not, we're not saying this is, fully true or whatever. But what I've read, 700,000 from Horner's own pocket, and then Red Bull upped it to 1 million to keep it on the down low. And even since then, that's when she's got suspended. So they've suspended the female colleague now. And then a lot of people were saying, the big thing was if Horner stays on, then Max and Helmut Marko were all going to lead the team. Adrian Newey, the three of the 4 big names that have helped Red Bull progress ever since the Sebastian Vettel domination period. So, without Max, without Helmut Marko, without Adrian Newey, what is Red Bull? Christian Horner by no means is a bad team principal. In fact, even before all this, of course, he was a very polarising figure, but I always had the, utmost respect of how good a team principal he was. Of course, that's tainted a little bit now. I can't really, egg him on as much, but it's all been a bit of a whirlwind, but a lot of people say Max Verstappen off to Mercedes. Now that would be a really, really interesting switch, inheriting Hamilton's scene. And Hamilton would be kicking himself that he should have waited longer, maybe try and get the move to Red Bull himself. You never know, especially if other people like Helmut Marko weren't there to work alongside him, because that would have been a bit of a frosty relationship. But I do wonder, maybe it's not the right angle to take on this, but I do wonder where they all are to go if this Red Bull thing genuinely does sort of collapse in on itself. Seb, have you got any thoughts? Has anything progressed as far as you're aware?
I'm not actually sure what's going to happen, but genuinely I think it will just blow over, unfortunately. As much as I'd love, Mercedes to swoop in and take Verstappen and Newey to leave and Red Bull to just be absolute chaos, and for us to actually get, a fight at the front, even if it was Ricciardo and Perez at Red Bull, an absolute calamity of a lineup. But they've got the best car by miles, and it's like, how would that work out? I'd love for that to happen, but unfortunately it does seem like Verstappen, he's going to stand to at least the end of his contract, which is 2028. So it's, unfortunately, I don't think it's going to happen.
Well, I think it is going to happen, actually. Yeah. I think I don't know if they're all going to go. I don't know if Verstappen is going to be the one to go. I think people, the likes of Adrian Newey, could go, though. I think just an agreement of wanting to work with someone like that, you don't want it, and it seems a very toxic atmosphere at the minute. A lot of talking to the media, a lot of talking behind people's backs. It's not a place you really want to be, and I think Adrian Newey could potentially go to Ferrari, is what I think. And this weekend, the CEO of Ferrari was actually in the Red Bull, like the media pen, the hospitality, sorry. So why else would he be going in there other than to maybe have a chat about things? Not for Adrian Newey, it could be for Max Verstappen. Sean Leclerc out for Verstappen.
That would be insane.
I just feel like there's a lot of talks going on. I don't know about Verstappen going to Mercedes, because actually Carlos Sainz and Carlos Sainz Senior were in there this weekend in their hospitality. Could be just having a chat about his appendicitis operation. Yeah. Crazy to see him back up and running the next day.
Well, I wouldn't say running. If you saw the video, the memes were brutal.
Oliver and his dad went to high five him and he just went. Well, that is Carlos Sainz, but Verstappen leaving. It would take a lot, but I could see personnel like Helmut Marko potentially dropping down. I could potentially see Christian Horner still leaving at this point. Still got an investigation, or over 100-page investigation to be released on it all. The pressure could get to him. The media. He said in the media, leave us alone, leave me and my family alone. Well, no, you can't just get away with it.
Yeah.
You can't, and it's another big talking point, I guess, is other drivers. So the likes of Lando Norris and Daniel Ricciardo, I know, got a lot of backlash.
Fernando Alonso has been do you mean with the Red Bull seat that could open
up?
No,
just in the sense of speaking about the situation.
Oh, sorry.
It's a PR nightmare for any other teams because it's being brought up with them, and they're not sure. Lando said, it's got nothing to do with me, McLaren, or F1. The F1, it's not got anything to do with McLaren or Lando Norris personally, but it has got something to do with F1.
Oh, yeah.
It was a weekend of, International Women's Day week, and it was the first F1 Academy to be televised. It just meant a lot for that weekend, and, drivers shouldn't have to be questioned like Lando Norris or Daniel Ricciardo, because he has some links, but I guess Valtteri Bottas, what's he got to do with it?
Yeah, that was so strange.
However...
Their responses were poor. That's
the point. It's poor. You don't need to be talking about it. You don't need to be bringing names into it. You don't need to be saying Horner, but you definitely can't just brush it off.
You can't just say it's noise.
Especially when there's only been so much that's been released. You've got the rumours of the hush money and stuff like that, and then that Google Drive folder that had all the WhatsApp messages and photos in. Which, they weren't exactly damning. I was expecting a lot worse, which is maybe a bit of a sort of a weird mindset to have about it. But it was obviously still not on to be, with the position of power that he was in. But it was just weird looking at them. I couldn't do it for very long. I was like, I've got to, this is not right.
There was nothing incriminating on them WhatsApp messages, but there's still an investigation going on. So it's
probably not the full picture.
The fact that there's hush money about it. Yeah, he was having an affair. Looks bad for his family, but there's clearly more to it. The way this is all gone about.
$700,000 for WhatsApp messages saying, oh, I'm in a plane and I'm excited. Like,
Yeah.
come on.
Well, that's just gonna.
But it's
come out.
all rumours. I'm
Yeah,
not
It
saying
is.
anything.
It's all going to come out for whatever the truth is. The truth always comes out. And I do think with the pressure and everything, Christian Horner will be gone by the end of the season. That is my opinion. And I think we could see some personnel like Helmut Marko gone. Don't think Verstappen, but maybe Adrian Newey.
Do you think if Horner goes, though, do you think the others...
Marko could stay. But I've seen if Horner goes, the CEO of Red Bull will step in because he's owned football teams before and he's got this, he's very good with business. I mean, he's CEO of Red Bull. But that he's refusing to answer any questions. He was asked if it's tarnishing the name and he said, I'm not going to answer any questions this week. But yeah, it looked like they sorted it out, but Jos Verstappen will be back for Australia, apparently.
Yeah.
They've got some backing noise for that. That is Jos Verstappen's soul.
Yeah.
So there could be drama at the next Grand Prix because he speaks a lot in the media. Helmut Marko will be there and Christian Horner. Who knows what's going to happen because something's changing every week. But exciting for the sport if there is changes.
Yeah.
Just sadly a really not nice reason.
Of course we're all appreciative for silly season changes, but obviously this is the wrong reason for it to happen. Yeah, one thing that is sort of like really making me I suppose uncomfortable is the right word. At the end of the first two races of this season, while Max is on the podium, these really sort of prolonged, camera shots of Jerry and Christian Horner sort of stood together. It's like why?
It's uncomfortable. Jerry doesn't look.
No,
it looks forced, doesn't it? It looks royal
looks,
family sort of.
Trained.
Oh yeah. It is a weird one, and of course I think we'll avoid sort of trying to talk any more about it, especially with how it's still, I'd say, quite a new story as well. Nothing has properly been confirmed. Apart from, they have concluded that original investigation, and Christian Horner is supposedly off the hook, but. I think there is more to dig with this story. Again, this is just speculation. I'm not trying to defame anybody here, but let's wrap it up before we get in trouble, shall we?
Let's Red Bull.
Yeah, exactly. Please don't. Sadly, a bit of a somber note to round out the podcast this week, but that is the end of this week's episode. We hope you've enjoyed. We hope you want to check out the rest of our content on our YouTube and other social media platforms. We've got more content coming your way. Of course, the Australian Grand Prix in just 2 weeks' time. We'll be previewing that, reviewing that, predictions, just basically the same stuff all over again for your enjoyment. And in the meantime, we have got another video, while there is no race weekend, like Jonathan Ross, while there is no race weekend this weekend, we will try and get some more content lined up for your entertainment. So thank you to Seb and Amy for coming on and talking all things Saudi Arabia. Thank you to you for listening or watching, and see you next week. Goodbye.
Bye. See you in Australia.
Good night, mate.